Democracy is based on two things. Number one, that the government is elected by the people. And number two, that the government listens or is guided by opposition, whether this is a formal opposition in Parliament or whether this is opposition from the street. The government listens to what people have to say. And at the moment, we're in a difficult position because the government is determined to silence opposition. And there have been attempts to do this in the past, but it's very rarely worked. At the moment, we've now got a law which allows this. It's very, very worrying. And Marina Purkiss on television yesterday said it's a slippery slope. The government is trying to say, well, we will accept this protest and not that protest. The government is making a decision about what it wants to hear. That is not acceptable. That is not freedom of speech. That is tyranny. Now, I think we have to place this in the context of the word protest. And protest comes from a Latin word, protestare, which means to declare, to witness, to testify, to shout. And it gave rise to the protestant movement, which is not about opposition. It's about shouting, standing on the street corner and shouting, probably from the Bible, to testify to this biblical belief, as opposed to a belief, for example, in the power of bishops and priests. The power of the Bible alone, the power of the word, the power of shouting on the street corner. That is the concept of Protestantism. Easily misunderstood. And at about the same sort of time, we get the word in English, to protest, in a legal sense. And we hear people talking about, I protest my innocence, which is to declare, to make a solemn and formal declaration. This is a use of the word which turns up around about 1600. And we have to consider that. We have to think of that meaning, the etymology, when we're thinking about what the government has been doing recently, because the government now wants to talk about peaceful protests as opposed to disruptive protests. A peaceful protest, about noise reduction. It is not possible to shout with a noise reduction. The whole concept of protesting is to make a noise, to be disruptive. The ultimate objective of a protest may well be to get people to negotiate, may be to get people to discuss, but the protest itself is to make a noise, to be disruptive, to cause a problem, to be heard. And yes, on today, people want to be heard about this. Tomorrow, people may want to be heard about that. And a government today would be very unwise, has been unwise, to give the police and the government of the day the discretionary power to ban speech. That's what it amounts to ban speech. You may protest, but silently. That is an oxymoron. It is not possible to have a peaceful protest. Yes, people have developed the peaceful protest. Great, great, great. They've developed other ways of protesting. But fundamentally, the word protest itself does not permit peace. The word protest is about shouting, is about declaring, is about publicly stating, making a noise. So the other day, over the coronation weekend, when people were arrested for potentially protesting, they were arrested before the protest actually began. They were arrested because they were suspected of having lock-on devices which would allow them to lock on to railings or something and disrupt the parade. Well, yes, elements of security come into play. Somebody screaming on a megaphone or whistling or using rape alarms or something might well frighten the horses. And that would cause them, at its worst, it would cause a stampede and a serious danger to life. But, and it would be awful to lose the parades of horses in the UK simply because we are frightened of what protesters might do, how protesters might scare the horses. We remember the situation in the Mall some years ago when the Queen was the subject of an assassination attempt and her horse reared, but she, being a magnificent rider, maintained control. You can't assume that everybody on those horses has the skill to rein the horse in. Some of the riders around the royal carriage the other day had only just completed their training. So I understand the security implications, but at the same time, arresting people because they were suspected of protesting, or because they were protesting about something which the government or the police don't condone, this is a slippery slope. So today we arrest people who don't like the coronation, who aren't monarchists or royalists. There's a difference, of course. A monarchist is somebody who celebrates the crown. A royalist is somebody who likes everybody in the royal family. I suspect, given the situation with Prince Andrew, there are no royalists left. But this slippery slope. Tomorrow, somebody in the present government may want to protest about ules. They may want to protest about fox hunting. People did. You can't decide as a government or a police force what you dislike, that people who you dislike or disagree with should be silenced. No, the people you dislike and disagree with should be spoken to. And that's the point of government. That's why we have an adversarial government. Because we listen, or we should listen, to the voices we don't like in a civilized and polite way. And if we don't do that, then it's more likely there's going to be more and more disruptive protesting. And we've got to a point in our parliament where there is no trade of opposition and government conversation. What we've got is a series of slogans being shouted from one side to the other. Neither side is listening to the other. We need to change this format. We need to be more trusting in the system. The system is there, and the system has survived for so long because it works. And at the moment, the system is breaking down. And so often, when we put up a piece about Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer, it's assumed on YouTube that we're being partisan, that we're favouring one side or the other. We might be, but actually, fundamentally, we have to favour the system. And the sloganizing, which YouTube particularly encourages, where people don't even listen to the YouTube video, they make a comment based on the title. This is very worrying. If people are not prepared to listen to one another, then we shouldn't be surprised that people are out on the street screaming at each other. I think ideally we want to discourage the screaming, but we want to hear what people have got to say. We really want to hear it. And as I say, if today people want to silence the anti-monarchists, the anti-royalists, tomorrow they will want to silence something that I want to protest about. We have to remember, it was the voices of the public which brought down Clause 28. It was the voices of the public which brought down the poll tax, or rather at least changed the poll tax. The public is an important body. The public needs to be listened to, and if you don't listen to the public, then it gets noisier and noisier. And government needs to engage. Government must engage. And this, I think, yet again, we just go back to Mrs. Thatcher. Mrs. Thatcher was able to listen to people, for the most part, because she had a reputation for being the Iron Lady, because she had a reputation for being inflexible. Actually, if you compare her manifestos with what she did, there's a big difference. And the obsession of politicians today to present inflexibility as some sort of benefit is a nonsense based on a misreading of the Thatcher era. No. The best politicians, the best government is one that listens and responds.